Hi there, and welcome to this episode of Insomnia Insight, in which we're going to go over 7 steps that will lead you to where you want to be, a place of peaceful sleep, no struggle for the rest of your life. At least they will set you off in that direction. Now, if you are a long-time follower, then some of the concepts will be familiar, but there are some things here that we don't talk about that often. And if you're new to the channel, then I think this is a perfect place to start. So without further ado, let's get going. Let's take a look at step number 1. Understand why you've had insomnia. This is foundational. What you want to understand is that insomnia is not a disease. It's not an illness. It doesn't mean you have some sort of deficiency. It doesn't mean your brain is broken. It doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It's not something that has afflicted you. Insomnia is simply a misunderstanding. Insomnia happens when our brain starts to see not sleeping as a threat, as a danger, as something that shouldn't be happening. Typically, there's something going on in our lives and we're a little bit stressed. And all of us humans sleep a little bit less when we are stressed. That's completely normal, typical, and functional. It's just a way for us to be a little bit more alert, more ready for whatever's coming our way. But what can happen then is this misunderstanding. When we're not sleeping, we're a little bit stressed, our brain is a bit hyper aroused, and it goes like, oh, wait, I'm not sleeping. This shouldn't be happening. And that's kind of the moment insomnia is born. That's the moment we start thinking of being awake, aka not sleeping, as a danger, as a threat. And then this cycle can occur where we think of not sleeping as a threat that makes us anxious, and the anxiety keeps us awake. And then we think even more that there's a threat, and then that keeps us awake. And then we think even more that we're threatened, and that this is the loop that we call insomnia. So understanding this is super helpful, because then everything else becomes irrelevant. We see it's not about our diet, it's not about our lifestyle, it's not about our life choices, it's not about medications or supplements. It's simply about this misunderstanding. And we see that when this misunderstanding is clarified, when our brain no longer thinks of being awake at night as a threat, we will no longer have insomnia. And this leads us very nicely to tip number 2, befriend wakefulness. When we have had insomnia, we have treated not sleeping at night as an enemy, as a foe, as an antagonist, something we need to fight with and defeat. And that keeps the struggle going. On the other hand, when we befriend wakefulness, everything starts to change. And what do I mean with befriending wakefulness? Well, on a practical level, befriending wakefulness is when we're no longer attempting to fight the fact that we're awake at night. So if you find yourself not falling asleep in the evening, or you find yourself waking up and staying awake for a while at night, then up until now, you may have tried breathing techniques, meditation tapes, medication supplements, and that is a way of antagonizing wakefulness, of fighting it, of trying to make it go away. Befriending wakefulness is anything that isn't that. When you are no longer trying to escape the wakefulness or treating it as an enemy, you are befriending wakefulness. You're teaching your brain that being awake is no threat, and that leads to insomnia going away. So befriending wakefulness can mean, for example, that you listen to a nice podcast that you enjoy, you watch some Netflix, you read a book when you find yourself awake at night. Or it can mean that you're simply resting in your bed, or it can mean having a snack. It can mean anything that no longer is fighting wakefulness is befriending wakefulness. Befriending wakefulness is actually non-doing. It's the absence of trying to make the wakefulness go away. Really, really helpful. Now, let's look at number 3. Tip number 3 is to be timeless. Take the timeless path. And what do we mean by this? Well, firstly, it means do not set any goalpost or timeline as for your recovery, as for you leaving the struggle. And this is really helpful, because if we tell ourselves that, oh, I want to be free of this insomnia struggle in 2 months, then on one hand, that can give us a sense of control and can be kind of motivating for us initially, but it always ends up leading to more pressure and more struggle, because we'll have that like the time, like the time is kind of ticking in your head, like, oh, it's been 2 weeks, it's been 3 weeks, am I any better? It leads to self-monitoring, it leads to kind of checking ourselves. And if we're feeling like we're not getting close to our goal, we're going to try experimenting, we're going to try to do things to sleep. And that leads us away from peaceful sleep, because you see, sleep is a passive, effortless, automatic process. And the more things we do in an attempt to achieve sleep is the exact same thing as doing things to escape wakefulness, and it leads to more struggle. So the more we have like a timeline, and we check time and we monitor how close we are to our goal, the more pressured we're going to be, and the more things we're going to try to achieve our goal, and the more we're going to struggle. So the timeless way really applies to kind of like having a timeline for recovery, if you will. It's much more helpful to not have that, not have any timeline at all. That leads to no pressure and less experimentation and an easier way. But the timeless way also applies to kind of like each and every night as well. When we have struggled with sleep, we often feel like sleep is escaping us. We have lost something we used to have, and we want that back. And we can get a sense of control by tracking each night, by being like, okay, how much did I sleep last night? How does it compare to the night before? Oh, what did I do yesterday because I slept pretty good? What did I do wrong the day before yesterday because then I slept pretty poorly, et cetera, et cetera. And this leads to, again, more experimentation, more trying, more effort, and less sleep. But when each night is timeless, that makes things easier for us. When we no longer track how long it took us to fall asleep, how many times we woke up, how long we were awake, everything becomes more fuzzy, more unclear. We're trying less. We're leaving kind of this whole like effort of trying to have control. Really, really helpful. So tip number 3 is to be timeless. Really, really helpful. Step number 4 is to stop searching for the solution. And we already kind of touched on this, but more specifically here, stop searching for the solution means no longer asking people for the solution, no longer going online Googling, no longer going to that Facebook group or that Reddit group, looking for the thing that is going to make you sleep. Because you see, sleep again is effortless. It happens automatically when we're not trying to achieve it. And the more we try to look for a solution, and we try and we experiment, the more we're introducing effort into this effortless process. But when you're no longer trying to look for the solution, search for the solution, or experiment, that leads to things happening much easier, much more automatically and passively as it does when we're no longer struggling. So stop searching for the solution is tip number 4. Tip number 5 is don't tell people about your sleep. And not asking people about your sleep or their sleep is very related to tip number 4 here. And when we're no longer asking people like, how do you sleep? What do you do to sleep? It's aligned with not looking for the solution. But what we haven't talked about here yet is a tip of not telling people about your sleep. When you get into the habit of telling your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers how you're sleeping, firstly, it can like reinforce the idea that something is wrong with your sleep, because you're probably bringing up a lot of problems. But it also invites people to track on your behalf, to ask you, how do you sleep last night? How are things going with your sleep? And it also invites them to give you tips like, oh, have you tried this? Maybe you should try this, and in that sense, you off into experimentation. People asking you about your sleep invites you to kind of keep tracking and monitoring. So when you no longer tell people about your sleep, you're no longer asking about your sleep, that can be really, really helpful, because you're no longer getting input and your attention starts to shift away from sleep, which is really helpful. And now, tip number 6, something we don't talk that often about, but it's something that is actually really practical and helpful, is to separate your decisions from sleep. And these are, micro decisions, major decisions, all decisions in your life. Separate them from sleep. For example, if you're asking yourself, should I go out and meet some friends tomorrow night, then make the decision not based on how you think that will impact your sleep, but rather if you want to do that or not. Because if you base decisions upon sleep, that creates pressure. If you're like, oh, I'm going to stay home so that I sleep well, then the idea is there that, oh, avoiding activities in the night that can make me sleep. And this is an effort to sleep. You're now trying to sleep, and that makes sleep tricky. But when you're separating decisions from sleep, when you're making all your decisions, regardless of how they will impact your sleep, then you are no longer inserting effort into the sleep process. And the pressure to sleep comes down because you're no longer making decisions around, centered around sleep, and things become much easier for you. Another way of saying the same thing is saying, like, live your life. Just do things you want to do in your life the way you want to do them. Live according to your values, but take sleep out of the equation. Separate your decisions from sleep. Really, really helpful and practical. And finally, tip number 7: speak to yourself like you would a friend who's had choppy sleep, who's struggled with sleep. And this surface level may look like, oh, how's this going to help? Is this really practical? It is actually super practical. I think one of the things that really maintain the insomnia struggle is self-criticism. This adds another layer of pressure when we're already struggling. And what do I mean by this? This is when we've had a choppy night and we go like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get this right? What am I doing wrong? These questions, they can seem like open-ended, exploratory, helpful questions, but they're actually a form of self-criticism. When we say, what's wrong with me? What we're actually saying is, there is something wrong with me. I just haven't figured out what it is. And when we're saying there's something wrong with me, that is self-criticism. We're critiquing ourselves. We're harsh on ourselves. We're being hard on ourselves. And that adds another level of difficulty for us. And if we think about it, if a friend of us said, oh, I hardly slept at all last night, would we say to them, what's wrong with you? Get a grip. Why can't you sleep? We would never do that. Not in a million years. We would be like, I'm sorry that happened. It's going to be okay. We give them a hug. We'd be supportive, right? And when we do that to ourselves, when we have that inner dialogue with ourselves, the supportive, warm, gentle, and kind dialogue, things get so much easier for us. Because when that critique, when that harshness lifts, everything just gets easier, including sleep and life in general. So that is it. Those were my 7 tips, 7 steps to recover from insomnia. Hope they brought a lot of value. But, I would add one more thing to this, which is, if you hear this and you're like, okay, I think this is the way I'm gonna follow these 7 steps. I'm gonna implement these. Then please let us know how things go. Let us know here in the comment section how things go, what you found helpful, and that leads to like discussion, inspiration, and we're all rooting for you. So if things are kind of tricky, we'll all want to help and support, and then give you some more tips, maybe some that weren't in here. But anyways, I'll conclude there. Thanks so much for tuning in, and see you next time. Bye for now.